Question. Hi Kim, thanks for all you do. You mean a lot to me and I'm sure to everyone else as well. Well, probably not everybody, but anyway. Something has been on my heart for a long while now. I look at the world and all I see is evil. Most people in the world aren't spiritual, and even the ones I met that still live worldly lives, and it's not someone I would look to as a role model. I find that as I continue to seek to grow spiritually, I feel I should leave society and become a Buddhist monk and live in a monastery for a couple of years or more. I just feel like everyone lives for the ego. Everything we do is to build our egos. But I feel that as you grow spiritually, you should let go of the ego and not be identified with it anymore. But then once the ego is gone, what should you do? I don't really know. That's why I think I should leave everything and live in a monastery to develop some clarity on life. There's so much to life I don't understand. We are born with egos and the ego thrives on pleasures. But the spiritual path is all about dissolving the ego and finding a new identity in your higher self. I just feel like living in a society, it isn't possible to dissolve your ego because everything you do in society is for the ego. I feel the only way to grow spiritually, the fastest way possible, and attain my ascension is to leave society and focus solely on my spiritual growth. What do you think about this? Am I onto something or am I being deluded? Well, you said one sentence in there. Everything we do is done for the ego. Or at least everything we do can be done for the ego. So, I have known people, including myself when I was younger, I felt the need to withdraw from society, go into a more and live in a spiritual community. But this was also, at least in part, done for ego. Because I built my sense of ego as a special person because I was in the spiritual teaching, I was in the spiritual movement, and I had been willing to sacrifice my worldly life and break off my worldly life to come there and live a more spiritual life. So your ego can also use that. And you will, if you look honestly at spiritual movements, you will find some people there who have been in this, whether it's a Buddhist monastery or a modern spiritual movement, who have been in this movement for a long time. They've done all the outer things right, and you will find they have some of the biggest egos you're ever going to find. So let's look at it in a different way. I have said in several videos, including 2 of my breakthrough videos, we all have a life plan. And there are 2 aspects of the life plan. One is the growth we want to go through spiritually, which really means resolving psychology. And the other is what we want to bring to the world, what kind of a gift we want to give to the world. So I've also said that many of us, and it sounds like this is a relatively young person, we have 2 phases in our lives. One where we are focused on resolving psychology, and then later we focus on what we can give. And so when I was younger, I did feel it was necessary for me to somewhat withdraw from society and live in a spiritual community. And I met many spiritual people who also have that sense. So I'm not saying that can't be valid for the person asking the question or many other people. But I would look at this as a phase in my growth, not as a lifelong commitment. Because that's what you find in many of these, especially like Buddhist monasteries. As I understand it, with the little I know about it, you make a commitment. This is for the rest of your life. And I wouldn't look at it that way. I wouldn't recommend that way for the person asking this. So what I'm saying is it could be very possible that it could be beneficial for you to withdraw into some kind of spiritual setting to get a different perspective. But I will not say that is the only way this could be done, because I strongly believe this can also be done by staying in the world and living a more worldly life. As I've said several times, in the age of Aquarius, we are meant to live our spirituality in the world, to be in the world but not of the world, and demonstrate that you can live in the world and still live a spiritual lifestyle. But as I said, it sounds like a young person, so it may be, basically I would say if you have a strong intuitive sense that this is something you should do, then do it, but do it with the purpose that you are there to learn something from it, not necessarily that this is the right decision for the rest of your life. But I would also say that what the person is describing, I see the world as evil and everybody's out for their egos. This to me sounds like this is coming from some subconscious selves that I talk about in many of my videos. And I've seen this in myself when I was younger. You're dissatisfied with the world. I've seen many spiritual people. You're dissatisfied with the world. You don't like the way things are going in life. And so, in a sense, you're running away from it because you want to get away from this. But why do you want to get away from it? Because you can't deal with it. Why can't you deal with it? Because of your unresolved psychology, these subconscious selves that are causing you to react. I look back at myself and I can see that. When I was in my late 20s, I decided to leave my comfortable life in Denmark, go to the United States, be part of a spiritual community. And I did this partly because I had a valid intuition that it was part of my past to do this. And I look back at it and I can see this was clearly part of my spiritual path. But I also can look back and see that part of my motivation was my unresolved psychology, that I couldn't deal with the world, I reacted to the world, and I wanted to get away from my reaction. In other words, I wasn't trying to get away from the world, I was trying to get away from my own subconscious selves, because I thought they wouldn't be there in a spiritual setting. And lo and behold, they were there. My ego had just as much trouble dealing with the spiritual community as it did in the worldly community. So you can't run away from your psychology, okay? You always take it with you. So you have to be realistic here and say, if you have this strong reaction to the world, you can withdraw from the world, but you will find that you will have the same reactionary patterns in a Buddhist monastery or wherever you go as you have in the world. There will be other people you will have conflicts with. It's just inevitable. So you could also say, well, maybe I don't need to go into a monastery. Maybe I just go into an intense period of use the tools that Kim is talking about to expose these subconscious selves and overcome them. And maybe you don't need to go to a Buddhist monastery to attain the same kind of growth. I know I'm basically arguing both sides of the fence here because, as I said, we all have an individual life plan. And if it is part of your life plan to go into a spiritual community of some kind, by all means do it. But just don't make the commitment with the outer mind, this has to be for the rest of my life. Be sensitive. Maybe you're just there to learn something. There can come a point where you know intuitively you've learned it. Now you need to go back in the world because the later stages of your divine plan are related to what you're going to do in the world. And you don't want to miss that by making this decision, oh, I just have to live this way the rest of my life. So basically, what I'm saying is, as I always say, the spiritual path is about three things: resolving psychology, and resolving psychology. And whether you do this in a monastic setting or in a worldly setting, it's basically the same process. And there may be one that helps you see the things in your psychology, but definitely be aware. Running away from something is never going to give you maximum growth, but really you can't run away from anything because your psychology is going to follow you. You can't run away from your unresolved psychology any more than you can run away from your own shadow.